At a certain time of year, the fishing fleets of the island of Sodor are exceptionally busy. They caught lots of fish, which was highly valued on the mainland. Thomas, Percy, Duck, and sometimes James had to collect the fish from the small fishing village. The fish was in boxes that had to be loaded onto their trucks. Then they would take their trucks to the depot in the marshalling yards. Henry would then take a long train of trucks to the docks on the other side of the island for shipment. His train was always called the Flying Kipper. And Henry, knowing the importance of his load, was very proud and often quite snooty. One day, Thomas was waiting by the quayside of a small fishing village, whilst the fishermen loaded his trucks. They used an old crane to do so. It was so old, in fact, that it often broke down, which made Thomas late with his deliveries. This made Henry angry.
Boats at the big harbor wait for no one, Thomas. If I'm late, this fish will rot. Fish is for eating, not rotting.
And off he would puff. Thomas tried to explain, but Henry would never listen.
One day, Thomas was at the quayside of a small village. Fish were being loaded into his cars. The work took a long time. The fishermen were using old equipment, and Thomas was worried. I'm going to be late for Henry at the docks. He won't like this. Please hurry up. Thomas was rudely interrupted.
Today, the crane was playing up again. What was worse, it dropped several boxes onto Thomas's boiler. Fish went everywhere.
His driver and fireman laughed. Phew, sniffed Thomas. What a pong!
Thomas's boiler was hot, so before the men could clear them away, some of the fish was half cooked. Ah! Exclaimed Thomas. I smell like an old fish box! And he did. Even the fishermen avoided him if they could, but his driver and fireman just laughed. You'll smell as sweet as roses when we give you a good washdown in the yards. Anyway, you did us a favor. The fishermen said we could cook any fish we find, and we found lots in your cap, so we're going to have a fry-up on Fireman's shovel, and we'll use your fire to cook on, his driver said. Thomas was most upset. Not only did he smell of fish on the outside, his cap smelled of fish as well. No engine will ever speak to me if I smell this bad, he said dolefully to himself. He remembered when Gorn had fallen into a ditch and smelt of ditch water for days. Thomas teased him for weeks about that, so the last engine he wanted to meet today was Gordon. By the time the fish was loaded, Thomas knew he was going to be late for Henry's train. The fishermen came to thank Thomas, but instead of thanking him for being so patient, they started to laugh and point to his boiler. His driver and fireman joined them. They didn't know quite what to say. Thomas's boiler was covered in fish scales, which had stuck so fast to it because of the heat that it would take them ages to clean them off.
He looks like a sprat to me,
a fisherman laughed. Thomas fumed. We're late. It's all right for you, but you don't get the sharp edge of Henry's tongue at the depot. Being late is worse than dirty. His driver agreed, and soon they were speeding along the beautiful coastal run.
He was glad when they were speeding along the beautiful coastal run. Then,
just as they neared the lighthouse,
they saw a man.
A man was standing on the rail waving a red flag. Whatever next?
What's the matter now?
Thomas fumed. His driver stopped and spoke to the man. He was the lighthouse keeper. He explained that a series of high tides had started to erode the railway line, and it might be dangerous.
High tides are damaging the track, reported the man.
I'll inspect it, said Thomas's driver.
I've marked the spot, reported the man. We'll go and inspect, said the driver.
And off they set again. The lighthouse man had marked the eroded area with a red flag. They stopped to inspect it.
It would be dangerous for heavy engines like Henry, agreed the driver. But for Thomas, it's safe enough.
But we'll be okay if we go slowly. Before they left, the guard left a large
red oil lamp
burning
by the damaged track
track so engines could see it at night.
to warn engines.
It would be safer to close the line completely, the guard said to Thomas's driver. But there was no one they could tell, and no telephone to use until they reached the yards.
When we get to the docks, I'll tell them to close the line.
As all this delay was happening, Thomas was getting more and more angry. A seagull added to his woes by sitting on his dome. The seagull was very interested in all the fish scales on Thomas's boiler, but flew off when they approached the tunnel, much to Thomas's relief. It was bad enough being late and covered in fish scales, smelling like an old fish box without a seagull perched on his dome as well. At last they reached the yards.
Henry was waiting for Thomas's cars.
Henry was very cross.
Pah! You're late, and that smell is making me ill. It's the fish, replied Thomas, and there's danger on the rails. That's why we're late.
Ha! You're the only danger on the rails, Thomas.
You're a late, smelly little engine. Because of you, we're going to take the shortest and fastest route possible. But I like that coastal run, so I'm not as angry as I should be, Henry said.
But that route's dangerous. There's erosion on the track, said Thomas urgently.
Erosion for you, maybe, Thomas, but not for a big engine like me. Now, would you be as good as to remove yourself? Your fishy smell is making me quite ill, and I have to be 100% fit for this run tonight.
Now stop wasting time and get your cars hitched to my train.
Thomas knew that no matter what he did or said would stop Henry. Soon, Percy and Duck had shunted Thomas's trucks onto Henry's train. The guard blew his whistle, and off Henry set.
Thomas's driver and fireman were in the yardmaster's office
Was telling him about the erosion.
when they heard Henry's whistle. He was steaming out of the station with his long, heavy train called the Flying Kipper.
They had no idea that Henry's driver had rearranged his route and was heading for disaster, until Thomas told them.
What route is Henry taking tonight? Asked the driver. The coastal run, it's the quickest. But I told you, gasped the driver. That's dangerous for a big engine like Henry.
"We must tell the signalman immediately," said his driver, and ran to the signal box.
The yardmaster quickly phoned the signalman. Henry roared past the signal box.
I'll soon make up for lost time.
The signalman couldn't hear the warning. By the time he did, Henry was far away in a cloud of steam.
The signalman, upon hearing the news, phoned the junction box. Henry was speeding past it as the telephone rang. He made so much noise that the signalman didn't hear the phone ringing until Henry had passed by.
It's too late! Henry has gone by and there's no switch points until he's well past the lighthouse,
he said urgently. Thomas's driver was most concerned. I just hope Henry's driver sees the red lamp we left. I think we should go back there, just in case he hasn't, he said gloomily. Thomas's driver organized Percy and Doc to follow them. None of the engines were happy. Henry might be difficult to work with, but they would never wish him to crash. Henry, meanwhile, was enjoying himself immensely. It was a beautiful night. He noticed that the tide was higher than he'd ever seen it before on this run.
Erosion,
He muttered to himself,
Thomas probably meant high tide.
and he whizzed along.
But when Henry reached the coastal track, his hopes for a fast run were dashed. Fog floated everywhere.
I can't see.
Cried Henry, nor could his driver.
Soon they came to the long, straight stretch of rail. In the far distance, the lighthouse beamed its message to the ships at sea. Strangely along the stretch, a sea mist was blowing inland. It was thick enough to blind the red light, which Thomas's guard had left to warn them. Henry's driver saw it at the very last moment.
And when he could, it was too late.
He applied the brakes, but it was far too late to save Henry. The high tide had washed even more of the track bed away, so the rails were suspended in midair. When Henry hit this section, he took off, lurched to his side, and with a colossal splash, entered the water. Luckily, although the tide was high, it was not deep at this point. Miraculously, Henry stayed upright, but his long train of trucks did not. It was a very fishy mess. Henry's driver and fireman were okay. They'd hung on tight to his controls, and although it was a very bumpy ride, they did receive as much as a cut between them. Thomas, Percy, and Doc soon arrived. Percy and Doc went off to spread the news and get help. Thomas felt very sorry for Henry. I just wish he had listened to me, he sighed. The next day, they had to wait until the tide was high again, before huge sea cranes with a barge could get close enough to lift Henry.
As soon as the tide was high enough, Henry was craned out of the water.
Once there, it didn't take too long before Henry was settled comfortably in the barge.
This is rather nice,
He said to himself, but he hadn't realized that his load of fish and boxes had to be loaded on board as well. Henry was up to his funnel in fish. He felt very uncomfortable, but said nothing. The Fat Controller was most annoyed with him.
I don't expect my engines to go for a swim when they are meant to be delivering valuable goods. You have caused an expensive inconvenience, he said sharply.
Engines don't swim, Henry. You were meant to deliver fish, not swim with them. You should know that by now.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
There were lots of people and visitors on the quayside at the docks when Henry's barge came in.
When Henry arrived at the docks, Cranky the Crane looked down on him. My, Henry, I expect you'll have some fishy tales to tell. But take my advice, have a long hose down first. But there was worse to come.
Look, cried some kids. They've caught all that fish and a huge green whale thing,
Two,
said one. That's no whale. It's the monster of Sodor Island, said another, and everyone laughed.
Henry was most upset.
Henry felt very miserable indeed, and wished now that he had listened to Thomas. He was lifted out of the barge and shunted into the dock sheds.
You will stay there until all that fish is cleaned off you, Henry,
said the Fat Controller sternly. Later, Gorn arrived and parked alongside Henry. He had to do Henry's work that night. He looked at Henry and smiled.
Sometimes, Henry, I think you take your work too seriously. Just because they call your train the Flying Kipper doesn't mean you have to smell like a fish,
he joked and puffed away laughing to himself.
Thomas now felt sorry for Henry. Come on, your driver says it's time for a nice washdown. Then you'll feel much better. And Henry did.
I'm sorry I was rude to you, Thomas.
That's all right. But can you smell something?
What?
Fresh air,
Oh, yes.
replied Henry happily.